All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thanks, Paul, for the reminder. If you could, please silence your phones. All right, we're going to go ahead and, again, call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regularly scheduled Planning Commission for December 9th, 2021. We're almost to 2022, so just be patient. You'll survive.
I just scoot over too.
Go ahead and do announcements. Ms. Lidar, are there any updates to the agenda?
PDR 2101P, Cedar Run Phase 2, Cedar Run Condominium Association, is a public comment letter from attorney represented the citizen, and all the changes are in an update memo and it has been attached to the agenda management system.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Soto, is there anything from the county attorney's office?
No, Chairman, not at this time.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to go ahead. Are there any requests from the commissioners that's on the agenda? But usually we don't have any, so all right.
No, sir.
All right, very good. We're going to go ahead and open this up for citizen comments. This is the portion of the hearing that if you have a comment, a statement, something you would like to put on the record that is not related to an item on the agenda, you would have an opportunity now. If you have something you'd like to say about an item on the agenda, you'll have a time when that application is being heard. So again, this is just general or open comment. So is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and make a comment? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're gonna close the public comment portion, and we're gonna go ahead and go on to the advertised public hearing. So the first item we have is item number 1. Ms. Slidar, can you please read item number 1 into the record?
Item number 1, PDPI 1922 CG East County Facility, as known as Premier Park, is a GDP Manatee County Board of County Commissioners, a rezone of more or less 110 acres generally located north of State Road 70, east of Post Boulevard, southeast of Rangeland Parkway, and west of EU Lane Road in Manatee County, and commonly known 16410 Rangeland Parkway from General Agriculture, Watershed Protection Evers, Special Treatment Overlay District, to the PDPI Plan Development Public Interest Zoning District, retaining the Watershed Protection Ever Special Treatment Overlay District, and approving a general development plan for a county park. The case manager is Mr. Marshall Robinson. This is a quasi-judicial case, and he represented the applicant is Ms. Katie LeVar.
Very good, thank you. And this item is quasi-judicial, so it requires that anybody providing testimony or comment is going to need to be sworn in. All of the other applications we have on the agenda are also quasi-judicial. So if you have any desire to speak at today's meeting, you need to be sworn in, so please rise to be sworn in. If you don't do it now, you'll have to do it prior to making a comment. So if you intend to speak, please rise to be sworn in.
Swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to the Planning Commission will be truthful and accurate. Thank you.
Very good. And again, because it's quasi-judicial, I'll ask the commissioners, have there been any ex parte communications regarding this application?
No.
Very good. No. All right. Ms. LeVar, if you could, please introduce the application.
Well, good morning. I'm Katie LeVar with Stantec, representing Manatee County. This morning, the application before you is on presentations upon request. We have reviewed the staff report and are in agreement with the stipulations that are presented that were recommended by staff. And so I have a presentation that I can run through, or I'm happy to answer questions, but I leave that to the board to make that decision.
Very good, thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment and see if there's anything specific
Very good.
related to this application.
Thank you.
And then we'll consider after that. So again, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak to this application or make a public comment regarding this application? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and open it up to the commission. Is there anything additional, very clear what the intent is? So is there any information, Mr. Rutledge?
I just have one question. Is there any details? I know that there's been a lot of discussion and ideas put forward. This zoning change would then provide for some of those things that have been talked about. And can you just kind of say 2 sentences of the things that might be a part of this?
The program?
Yeah, sure, I'd be glad to. And as you said, what we are proposing today is a rezone from general agriculture retaining the watershed overlay district to plan development public interest with a general development plan. And so with that general development plan, we've identified a broad variety of general uses that include public use facilities, so a library, sheriff's substation, an EMS station, along with low-intensity recreational uses. Again, broad variety of recreational uses so that the facility can grow and adapt to the needs of the community over time, along with court sports such as tennis, pickleball, stadiums so that tournaments can be played in those places, baseball and softball fields because that is a need of the community in East County, soccer and multi-use fields as well, and then an aquatic center. And so that, again, super broad brush, very general uses, again, so that it can adapt over time. And as these uses are needed in the community, each time an idea comes forward, the goal is that the plan doesn't have to come back before a public body for a decision, as long as the uses that are contemplated are among the range that are identified on the site plan.
Who is specifically responsible for requesting the uses and making directives for the site plan you're requesting?
So that would be, decisions about what uses would be contemplated would be staff in property management and parks and natural resources.
A name of who is responsible for this?
I'll ask Mr. Tom Yarger with
Okay.
with property management to answer that question.
Thanks.
Good morning, Tom Yarger with Property Management, Construction Services Manager. The answer to the question is it's the director of the department that is going to own the facility. So if it's a Parks and Natural Resources, it might be the pickleball courts or tennis courts or other facilities. If we build something for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it would be the director of Convention Visitors Bureau. So Charlie Hunsicker, Elliot Falchone. If it's a public safety facility, it would be Jake Sauer. I mean, it's the owner of the facility after it's completed is the person that makes the main decisions. And of course, Dr. Hopes and the deputy county administrators.
Okay, so what I'm trying to understand is there's all these variety of users out there. And full disclosure, I play out there all the time, so I know there is a certain group out there. But so when somebody says, I want to put out there pickleball, and I need twice as many pickleball courts as there, who makes the decision that that's an appropriate use of the land, works out the funding, and then gets it approved for a change in the site plan that we're generally giving zoning for?
That would be, again, the director of the department that would own the facility. So if it's a pickleball facility, it will be Charlie Hunsicker and the deputy county administrators and the county administrator.
Okay, so the executive staff of the county administration will make the final decision about a particular land use, its viability and appropriateness in the scheme of everybody else's demands, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Very good. Anything, Mr. Roth?
Does it get final approval from the Board of County Commissioners?
It eventually would have to get an administrative permit, I believe, and depending on the use, it may have to go back to the board if something changes, from the general development plan.
Thank you.
But anything within this plan could go through up there, get approved, we'd never know about it necessarily publicly, it would just get approved. You have no further obligation to come back and tell the community, we've decided to put a National Fire Rescue Training Center out there because they decided that was a good idea. Just as an example, nothing against the fire department.
No, but in that instance, we would have to go back out, and we typically would do public information meetings and let people know, if we're going to come back with a specific, like the pickleball courts, we talk to people about the pickleball courts, we talk to them about the aquatic center. The commissioner of the district also has some input.
And to be clear, you're talking about the function, the process, but there's still funding that has to be discussed, and there'll be opportunities during budgeting
Yeah,
exercises and things
Yes,
like
sir.
that.
Commissioner, Chairman, it's a process, and the process includes the CIP and the infrastructure sales tax, which fund the projects that we're doing. So there's a process to get funding through those approval boards, and then it goes again to back up to the executive offices, and they fund it.
Again, the thing I want to try and crystallize in this question for you is, this is an asset for the community. There are a variety of constituents that have interests. They're competing. We're giving you basically, this is the last time we'll necessarily meet you before you then carry off whatever plans you have for all those constituents. This area, whether we do a lot or a little, makes people understand what's going on. They have a chance to come and say what they want. The process that we turn over to you now doesn't have any of those absolute obligations. You're right, somebody has to get money and somebody has to get approvals, but it doesn't come back to a public venue like this. And so what I am trying to point out is, I want the community to hear that they have to monitor all the rest of these vehicles, because it's not going to come back through here and the commission for approvals for decisions you will make administratively. Is that correct?
It will not, in my understanding of the process, it will not come back to the planning commission.
Right.
But it would go to the Board of County Commissioners, because every time we ask for money, there are budget amendments that have to go to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. So it would be an open forum.
And it's most likely that would be a very specific line item in the budget that would be published and distributed and advertised.
Yes, and whether we group them into an RFQ, request for qualifications for somebody to do pickleball and the aquatics facility, or if we do them individually, they come back. They come back to the board.
I think to summarize, the entitlements will be in place. The process, that's just the beginning of the process with regard to.
What we
getting
try to
something.
do with the general development plan is get input from the community and try to put everything on there that we think we might need to build in the next number of years. And if we go outside of that, we have to come back.
I understand. I'm trying to highlight something that I hear a lot, and I sometimes feel myself, and that is, once it becomes in the process, there are mechanics, and they just kind of go through them, and it's not as easy as people coming here and raising their hand and being on the press and so forth. I just want people to be cognizant that we have to be diligent and alert, otherwise other people who have interests will take it in a certain direction, that's all. And I think it's appropriate for us to say that. I think it's appropriate for us to say, hey, we're not going to get you back in the public forum where public comment can be made in this same venue. Maybe different, maybe in finance or budget meetings or whatever, which attract a lot less people. I just want people to know this is a beautiful asset. I think we've done a great job in the community. I love what they've done. I love the plans. But I think there's a lot of vying interests, and I want to be careful for the community that we are doing that in full disclosure, in the most transparent manner, because I think this is one of the most wonderful things we've done in the county, and I love it. I personally use it, and I'm telling you, it is a diamond. So we are entrusting you with something very significant, and I hope you'll always remember that we appreciate your hard work.
Thank you, sir.
To Mr. Rutledge's point, if you have an idea and you want to be an advocate, you now know who to talk to. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, anything further from staff?
Yes, sir.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Marshall Robinson, Development Services, and I have been sworn. The only thing that I would follow up with Mr. Rutledge on the process is that, yes, we're in a public hearing and it is a rezoning. They do have a GDP or General Development Plan before us. And the purpose of the GDP or General Development Plan, together with the rezoning, is to can this property up with the entitlements of a PDPI zoning district. And the entitlements that are canned up in that zoning district will travel with the GDP. And Mr. Rutledge, you're right. Once the GDP process is over with, they'll go into an administrative review process, and we call that the final site plan review. And it's true that the final site plans do not have public hearings associated with them, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that that FSP review is under the scrutiny of all the requirements of the Land Development Code for the PDPI zoning district. So it's not kind of something that would slide under the radar, or, I mean, there's no public hearing, I'll grant you that. However, we do have a great deal of regulations and requirements that are part of the FSP approval that we do administratively, and so it should be understood that if this GDP with the rezoning were approved today, then the uses that are listed throughout the staff report would be, at any given time, if they were to be submitted for an FSP approval, no matter which one they are, they'd still be under the scrutiny of the FSP review. And I just wanted to go on the record
You know,
and make
listen,
that.
you're 100% right, and we voted, and most of the people on this board voted to refine the process so they don't have to come back for every single thing they do. We trust our staff. I extol our staff. I think they're some of the best I've ever seen. So that understood. There are political strengths within the community that will have demands, and they will have land requirements, and I just want to make sure that everybody is fully vetted in that. Whatever we decide, I think we've done a good job. I don't mean we, I mean the community's done a good job. I just want people to be aware that when we say this, we have to be ever vigilant, because without that, it could get off track. Now, I'm not saying it will, but I want to say that I asked you about this, that's all. And I want people to hear that.
And if I may, just for a brief second, Mr. Rutledge, I think what you're imploring our citizens to do is be vigilant. So not only would it be applicable to this specific application, but I think it would be applicable to a lot of things that occur in local government. And so
I'm selfish, this is about me. No,
Yeah,
sorry.
we do want our citizenry to be as involved and aware of every matter that comes before Manatee County, the Board of County Commissioners, the Planning Commission. So I think it's a good philosophy to kind of put out there. But I think our staff and the applicant have, I think,
Forewarned and forearmed.
have presented what they have presented in light of the process that we have in place right now.
Okay, thanks.
Very good, thank you. Anything for, yes?
Really, I will say, I do have a presentation. It's a short one, but if you guys want to see it, I'm happy to give it to you.
I don't think we're overly concerned about the process, the entitlement process. It's, I think, again, to Mr. Rutledge's point, we need to be vigilant if there, again, is something that
No, I just
somebody
talked
might
about
be
the
passionate.
PowerPoint. I was just saying I had a PowerPoint if you guys wanted
Okay.
to see it.
I think we're good.
We trust you.
No, we were able to gain a lot of information from the application package, so, very good. So, again, I'll flip it back over to the applicant. Any closing comments?
No, we have no further comments, thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this application and open it up for discussion, deliberation, or consider a motion.
I would move that we accept the plan as submitted.
All right, very good. We have a motion from Mr. Rutledge,
Second.
second by Mr. DeLesline. And Mr. Rutledge, your motion is consistent with that in the staff report for approval?
Is exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, with that, I'll call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0 with Mr. Smock not being present. All right, very good. We're going to go on to item number 2. Ms. Lidar, can you please read item number 2 into the record?
PDR 2104 CG, Westover Estates, McAdam, Edmund James, McAdam, Jacqueline McAdam, Edmund James, and Jacqueline Living Trust, Mike Inery, Russell, Androy, Giovanni, McInery, Giovanni, Androy, Giovanni Lynn, McInery, Giovanni Lynn are the owners. This is a quasi-judicial case, a rezone for more or less 54.48 acres, generally located west of North River Road, south of Course Road, and north of River Ridge Boulevard, Parish, Manatee County, and commonly known as 3155 North River Road from General Agriculture North Central Overlay to PDR, Planned Development Residential North Central Overlay Zoning District, approving a general development plan for a 162 single-family residential development. The case manager is Ms. Dorothy Rainey, and he represented the applicant is Ms. Linda Stewart from Morris Engineering.
Very good, thank you. And again, this is a presentation upon request, so we'll follow the same format. We'll introduce the application, we'll open it up. If the commissioners don't have any questions, we'll open it up for public comment and see what comes from that. So also, it's quasi-judicial, so you must be sworn to provide testimony or comment on this application. So if you would, please introduce the application.
Hi, good morning.
Sorry, before you go on, did you ask if there were any quasi-judicial?
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, quasi-judicial, so have there been any ex parte communications?
No, sir.
All right, thank you, thank you. Very good. I'm
Hi,
sorry.
good morning. Linda Stewart, planner with Morris Engineering, representing the.
Can you, in
Okay.
the mic, thank you.
Sorry. Linda Stewart, planner with Morris Engineering, representing the applicant for Westover Estates, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
The request is for a rezone for 54.48 acres for 162 lot, single-family subdivision from agricultural and north central overlay to planned development residential, with remaining the north central overlay district, with 3 specific approval requests and a GDP approval request. We've reviewed the staff report and we have no comments, and we are in favor of the conditions that have been recommended. And we believe the development is in compliance with the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan, and we do have a presentation available upon request, and if you have any questions, we are here to answer them for you.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing none from the commission, we'll go ahead and open it up for public. Oh, Ms. Lidar.
I'm going to enter an email that we received this morning with some pictures.
Okay, thank you. Was this from the applicant?
No, it's from a neighbor
Okay,
showing some issues related to flooding, and we received it this morning.
Thank you.
okay, for the record, it's from a neighbor. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
All right, we'll go ahead and open this application up for the, for anybody who has any comments. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Anyone at all? All right, seeing no one, all right. Again, if you could state your name and that you have been sworn.
Yeah, good morning, Christian Collins. I have been sworn. I'm the neighbor that borders this property. My family has about 1,500 feet that borders this property to the due north. And I'm not here to speak against the development whatsoever. I mean, development's going to happen. It is going to happen, but my family is going to maintain their residence at this property. And my only concern that I want to make sure is looked at is flooding, and I'm sure the paperwork you're looking at is probably from one of our neighbors, because we've all kind of talked about flooding potential with these properties. And over time, part of the property that borders Westover Estates, my property, has been filled in with quite a bit of dirt. If you look at the Westover plan, I think it's labeled as a park that's going right up against a portion of my property. And when you stand on my property and look at the new Westover Estates property, you can see about a 4 to 6 inch rise where dirt was added and brought up against my property. And my only concern is, and I just want to make it, put it out there, that my concern is I do not want my property flooded. Like I said, the development's going to happen. It is what it is, and I'm okay with that. But I just want to make sure that those type of things are looked at. So that's my statement.
Okay, for clarification, you said there was an area filled. You're referring to another property, not the one that the application is
No,
speaking-
I'm referring to the application, the current or previous owner who sold the property to the developer. Added quite a bit of dirt, and I believe it was 2014.
Okay.
At that time, and filled in quite a bit. And you can definitely see the rise, and I know with all this development coming. And it caused a little bit of flooding. There's some wetlands there in the creek that run through the property, and, you know, I've dealt with it, and I kind of live with the mindset of, you know, live and let live. You do it on your property, what you want on your property, and, you know, we've gone along that way. But with the new development coming and all that building, and there's got to be dirt brought in, I just want to make sure that that is really looked at, especially in that area in the back of our property. So.
Believe it or not, flooding is oftentimes a concern, so we'll have somebody speak to that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak to the application? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one else come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. And if we could, I have a question for the applicant and then also a question for staff. So for the applicant, Mr. Morris, I presume you can speak to some of the typical concerns related to stormwater management and how a new project might affect the existing systems.
Sure. My name is Matt Morris with Morris Engineering. I have been sworn.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is, well, first of all, full disclosure, I live in Twin Rivers right next door. I've lived there for 14 years, so I'm pretty familiar with this general area, and definitely don't want to do anything to the detriment of my personal neighbors either. So we will definitely be looking at this just like we do every project with the county's watershed modeling and looking at historical flows from adjacent properties through this property, from this property to adjacent properties, and making sure that we meet all the county's criteria. And we'll definitely go take a look at this specific issue and make sure that we're looking at things properly. But we will be adhering to all the county's guidelines and requirements to make sure that we're not discharging any additional water. We'll be looking at floodplain impacts and mitigation and that sort of thing out there. So that'll be done during the course of our final site plan and construction plan, just like every other project that we do in the county.
And just general, I know the answer, but I think it's helpful for those who maybe aren't as familiar with the process. You're adding impervious area. Is the intent to have a system in place that's going to mitigate the additional runoff from impervious surfaces?
Yes, and again, similar to what we do with every project in the county, as is required by the county, we'll be constructing stormwater retention ponds on the site that will collect all of our water internally into those ponds and provide additional volume. Like you said, as you get additional impervious area, there's additional runoff that's coming from those hardened surfaces that would have otherwise soaked into the ground. So all that additional water will be captured in our stormwater ponds and allowed to fill our stormwater ponds up on our site that we're constructing before it discharges, so that we're not putting any more water off site than what's going off site currently. And again, we'll have to make sure we capture any runoff from adjacent properties and everything as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I had two questions. One is, it looks to me from the aerial that it is mostly highlands, that there's not a lot of low lands that you're going to mitigate here. Is that correct?
We're not impacting wetlands. There is a wetland, I believe, in the southwest corner of the site, if I remember correctly, without having the site plan in front of me. And then our stormwater ponds are concentrated more to the west side of the property, which is where some of the flooding concerns are right now with, I believe the email that you all just received was a property immediately to the west of this one. So having our stormwater ponds in that area and around the low areas will help us to make sure that our stormwater runoff from our property can get into those stormwater ponds a little more efficiently and a little easier, and provide that compensation that we're looking for to make sure we're not causing any additional flooding, or hopefully maybe even reducing some flooding while we're out there, but at least not making anything any worse than what it is.
And the other question is, Mr. Gerstenberger has seared into my brain the change in the flood zones and the new high water levels. Correct, Mr. Gerstenberger? And so I just want to be sure that you've used the most contemporary information that we have available, and that in consideration of that, the design you have is effective for the addressing of those kind of concerns that the neighbors would have. And Mr. Collins, your comments specifically.
Absolutely, yes. We are still in the process of finalizing our design, so we're not quite to a point where we have a full final site plan and construction plan to submit, but we are utilizing the latest modeling from the county, the latest FEMA floodplain maps, all the latest information for that design.
And would you expect as a neighbor here that this will improve the water conditions in your neighborhood or make them worse?
It definitely won't make them worse. I can't make any promises it will improve it, but it will definitely not make it any worse.
Very good. And are you aware of the condition that was spoke to about the filling of the site?
I am not, no.
Okay, all right.
It sounded like that was from quite a few years ago, but we'll definitely look at that as part of our design and go out there and take a look and see what we can do to make sure we help with some of that.
My question to you, were you aware of it, would be if it's being included in the analysis? Because, it's dated if there's a condition that exists in the field that's not represented in the current analysis.
We do have a new topographic survey that was done recently, so that new topographic survey would reflect that, but I do want to, we'll take a little closer look at more of the historical things prior to that 2014 and see what we can work out with that.
Very good, thank you. All right, Mr. Gerstenberger, kind of the same question. Are you aware of any condition that would have allowed for filling a site that might have a detrimental effect on the neighbor?
First off, for the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department, and I have been sworn.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, good morning.
Good morning.
Unfortunately, no, I'm not aware of any prior fill activities that had occurred on this property, but with the present zoning of this property being agriculture, that actually would have been an allowed use with the agricultural zoning category in this particular area, and with respect to the present zoning of this project. It is also an exempt activity through Southwest Florida Water Management District associated with agricultural uses within the zoning category. That all being said, and just to elaborate further on some of the prior discussion regarding flooding in this particular area, what I've brought up on the overhead right now is the, as Mr. Rutledge was alluding to, is our latest flood insurance rate map, the 100-year floodplain delineation, both in blue and in red on this particular exhibit, from the most recent firm maps that became effective August 10th of 2021, which utilizes the floodplain delineation and the associated drainage modeling from the Gilmore Creek Watershed Management Plan, which was a joint project that both the county and Southwest Florida Water Management District participated in. With respect to this particular project, since it is within Gilmore Creek, they would be required to meet the stormwater design requirements for 50% reduction in allowable runoff to mitigate for impacts within the 100-year floodplain, and through final site plan and construction plan review to demonstrate that no adverse drainage impacts are created to surrounding properties.
Very good. And that would be the model that you would require the applicant to utilize to provide the post-development condition analysis?
Correct, Mr. Chair, yes. The applicant would be utilizing the Gilmore Creek Watershed Management Plan and essentially updating the watershed modeling to reflect the proposed intent, the proposed construction of this development.
Okay, very good.
So could I just,
But is it about this?
yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Yes, please.
I'm on a short leash these days. So I just want to crystallize for the gentleman that, Mr. Collins is right? Yes, sir. So the important thing, I think, is that the county has done a great job in remodeling areas to the most contemporary understanding of water conditions, which are dramatically different over the last 5 or 10 years. And this is the most current information. With that as a guideline and with the standards that have been set, I believe when we vote for this development, your conditions will actually improve. Mr. Morris wouldn't say that, but it's my opinion based on this, that the conditions are going to require and the absolute reduction in runoff, you should intellectually be better off. And so I want you to know that I am very sensitive to this. Sir?
Let's keep the,
No, I was
No.
talking to Mr. Gerstenberger, sorry.
Yeah,
If I
let's-
may, none of
yeah.
that is expert testimony from a commissioner. And what I will do also add is there is a stormwater condition on page 9, C1, that talks about utilizing the most up-to-date firm map dated August 10th, 2021. And so all this is taken into account and in the staff report itself, and is a condition that the applicant will have to abide by as the development moves forward.
And one final point I'd like to make is, if we look at this particular project in comparison to Twin Rivers did not have the liberty to utilize the Gimble Creek Watershed Management Plan for any of its design or subsequent construction. And also, with respect to Twin Rivers, they were utilizing either the 1992 firm or the 2014 firm in comparison to this project, which would use the most recent 2021 firm.
And just as a point of information, what would you guess the differential in percentage is in the water runoff as far as volume differential? Can you say? From the 14 to now, or no? 10%?
It's not so much, it's more or less the delineation, Mr. Rutledge, than
Okay.
it would be as far as flows or volumes. So for this particular watershed for Gamble Creek, there's significantly more floodplain delineation that was identified from the watershed management plan that was physically identified on the flood insurance rate map previously.
And just for clarification, there may not be any actual change in the physical site that you would observe if you were standing there. It's the information we're representing. So nothing really changed. It doesn't flood less or more. It's just a better representation because of the information that has been collected. So, also, Mr. Gerstenberger, with regard to the agricultural exemptions that are allowed under, like, the Water Management District, that's understood, but there are certain things that are not exempt if there's any impact to any protected habitat or anything like that. So during the process, I think it would be important just to understand that that wasn't something that was done. So during, should this application move forward and move on to construction plan review, I think that would be something that would be helpful to, for staff to vet during the process. So.
Certainly, and as typical for this type of development, we do coordinate with Southwest Florida Water Management District, because there would certainly be parallel review paths both through the county and through Plymouth for an environmental resource permit of this development as well.
And then to kind of follow up on Mr. Soto's comments, the applicant has the burden of providing the proof that there's not a adverse impact to the neighbor. There's no guarantee or requirement that they have a beneficial effect on the neighbor, but the obligation is that they have that they don't make a condition worse or have a negative impact. Is that?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Very good. I just wanted to restate that so it was
Yes.
understood. So,
Thank
very
you.
good. Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
No, sir.
All right, very good. I'll ask staff, is there anything additional you'd like to put on the record?
No.
Very good, thank you. And then, all right, again, we'll go to the applicant. Is there anything further, I don't know that rebuttal's the proper term, but is there anything additional you'd like to put on the record?
We have nothing further, thank you.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for discussion, deliberation, consideration.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Ron.
Based upon the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and find the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and the Manatee County Land Development Code, as stipulated herein, I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County zoning ordinance PDR 2104ZG as submitted by staff.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Kebe. Is that close? Keba?
Welcome, Ms. Cannon.
Yeah. Second by Ms. Keba. Any additional discussion, deliberation? Anything further? All right. Chair's going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0. The next applications that we're going to be hearing are scheduled presentations, and item number 3 and item number 4 are related, and I have a conflict with that, so I'm going to have to turn the the chairmanship over to Mr. Ron, and I'm going to step away from the dais. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, he does a good job.
Good morning. Ms. Schenk, I have a quick question for you. Since both these items are related, can we hear them at the same time, or do you want to hear them individually? I know we have to make separate motions, but,
I would first, as a quasi-judicial, we hear them separately.
all right, yes, ma'am. All right, thank you. Ms. Slaughter, can you read the application number 3 into the record, please?
Item number 3, PDR 2020 CG, Grable, Gamble Creek Farms, Gamble Creek Ranch Holding 4, trustee of Gamble Creek Land Trust, and Paul Grable, Susan Grable are the owners. It's a quasi-judicial case, and it's a rezone of more or less 93.88 acres, generally located on the south-south of Golf Course Road, more or less 0.75 miles east of Fort Hammer Road, and more or less 1/2 mile west of Spencer Parish Road in Parish, from General Agriculture North Central Overlay District to the PDR North Central Overlay District, and approving a general development plan for 266 single-family detached, attached, and semi-detached residential dwelling units. The case manager is Mr. Marshall Robinson, and representing the applicant is here Mr. Ed Vogler and Ms. Anna Rittenauer.
Thank you, Ms. Slaughter. Is there any ex parte communication?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Applicant presentation, Mr. Vogler. Oh, Mr. Neal.
Fight for this lectern. Your last chair asked how long I was going to filibuster, probably about 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Thank you, sir.
My purpose here is to introduce our team, talk a little bit about the professionalism, and I might say the reason that Gamble Creek Estates is not controversial. First, my name is Pat Neal, 1003 59th Street Northwest in Bradenton. I've been sworn. We have been building here since 1970. My first controversial project was called Wildwood Springs. It was controversial. Do you remember where Wildwood Springs was? They didn't like all that density. I got Rod Fass, the head of the Carpenters Union, think of that, to picket the old courthouse that we wanted jobs in Manatee County. I'm not sure if I'm proud of that. I've now admitted it under oath. But the point is, we have always worked with local government and local government officials to get appropriate land use approvals in this community. We worked, I believe, 16 months on this, and I believe it's completely non-controversial. You, of course, will determine that. The people present are all Neal professionals, mostly old, some new. I'll identify the new ones. The old ones are our Senior Vice President, Jason Frost, a new one, Connor Burke, a new professional with a very high-class degree, Caitlin Ryan, new in public policy, from Clearview, Anna Rittenauer, who's very professional, and Chris Fisher. I don't know if you're here, Chris. You are. From Kimley Horn, Christopher Hatton, I think the best and most thorough transportation engineer in our region. Ed Vogler from Vogler Ashton, our lawyer since 1983. And from Ardura, Joel Christian, I'm going to say 18 years from Manatee County, the last 3 years from Ardura. I'd say they're all pros. I think we've worked out pretty much everything. Ivory.
Yes.
Is there anything else I'm supposed to know or say?
Just Ivory's name.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Ivory Matthews, our Vice President for Community Development. Anna Rittenauer will explain why we're here. Good morning.
Good morning. Anna Rittenauer with Clearview Land Design. I'm a certified planner and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
All right, I will be brief, hopefully. The area outlined in red is our project limits. To the east is Canoe Creek for reference. To the west is Cross Creek development. To the north, of course, is Golf Course Road, and to the south is a agriculture zoning. The existing zoning, is general agriculture. You can see to the north and to the east is PDR. To the west is PDMU, and to the south is also general agriculture. And our proposed zoning is an infill development, fits in with the area and with planned developments on 3 sides. The subject property and surrounding properties are within the UF3 Urban Fringe 3 future land use category that allows up to 3 units an acre. Here is an excerpt from our general development plan. There are 4 access points identified on the plan, 2 full functional ingress-egress points to the north to Golf Course Road, 1 stub road for future development to the south, kind of in that west corner, and 1 emergency access route to the east into Canoe Creek. There are 2 minor wetland impacts shown on this plan. 1 is in the northwest corner. It is about 0.17 acres. It is quite low quality and non-viable. And then the other is in the southeast corner of the property. The entire wetland is about an acre or a little less in total. We're only impacting about 2,000 square feet of it in order to accommodate that emergency access route. We have 3 specific approval requests. They have staff support. We agree with everything in the staff report. And so with that, I'm going to close my portion. I'm available for any questions, and I think I'll hand it over to Mr. Vogler for closing comments.
My name is Ed Vogler. I have been sworn representing the applicant, and I really have nothing to add other than to say that, as Mr. Neal said, we work hard and long on these projects, and we're here. And so we're very gratified that there's a favorable staff report, and we hope that you'll act favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the end of the applicant's presentation? Yes. Thank you. Are there questions of the applicant from
No, sir.
the commission? Thank you very much. That presentation.
Good morning, Marshall Robinson, Development Services. And I'm just gonna go through the presentation here. Some of the information might be repeated from Ms. Rittenauer. See if we get this to work. Okay. So the subject property is located on the south side of Golf Course Road, approximately 0.75 miles east of Fort Hammer Road, and approximately a half mile west of Spencer Parish Road in Parish. Property is approximately 93.881 acres. And looking at the zoning map, here's the existing zoning. It is in the North Central Overlay District, and it's also zoned general agriculture. The future land use is urban fringe, carries a maximum allowable gross density of 3 dwelling units per acre. The request is to rezone the 93 acres from general ag with NC Overlay District to a PDR within the NC Overlay District, and to approve a general development plan that would allow 266 single-family detached, attached, and semi-detached residential dwelling units. I got 4 here, but I think Anna's right. It's 3 specific approvals to the LDC and/or Public Works for a required front yard, setbacks, minimum travel lane width for travel lanes for private streets, and the NCO required accessory structure setback requirement. Here is a look at the surrounding development. Again, the proposed project is under the maximum allowable three dwelling units per acre afforded by the UF3 future land use category. Here are some of the previously approved surrounding developments, and in that column for density, we can see that the proposed project is right at or very comparable to the densities that have been approved in the surrounding area. So if we go back and take a look at this map, and we can kind of see all the PDRs and the residential development that's kind of going around our subject property here in the red box. And there are the densities by which they were approved. Here's a look at the proposed general development plan. As Ms. Rittenauer said, there are 2 full accesses located on Golf Course Road. There's a stub road located at the southeast or southwest portion of the property. There are 7.79 acres of on-site wetlands. And as mentioned, there are 0.17 acres to wetland A and 0.05 acres to wetland D. I would like to make mention that the staff report was incorrect. It did call out wetland C as being the impacted wetland for the access, and I'd like to correct that now by stating that it's wetlands D for the access where the .05 impact is. We also have an emergency access with a 40-foot easement at the southeast portion of the project perimeter boundary. Take a look at wetland D highlighted in yellow there, and we also see the red arrow where the proposed access easement for emergency access is proposed. We got buffers in and throughout the property in accordance with the North Central Overlay District. We got 20-foot greenbelt buffers along the project perimeter boundary. We also have a 50-foot wide roadway buffer along Golf Course Road. And we've also been supplied a general location for the required focal point in the planned residential plan development zoning district. That focal point, as a side note, will be reviewed for compliance at the time of final site plan approval. Here are the development standards that are being proposed for the residential plan development. Very similar and comparable to that surrounding development map that we seen earlier, where those plan developments were approved. These development standards are consistent and comparable to previously approved plan developments for residential development. In the notes here, we can see a couple of the specific approvals called out. Number one being the request to go to a 23-foot front yard setback for the garage portion of the structure, and from the sidewalk to the remaining habitable portion of the structure can be 20 feet. The front yard setback for side-loaded garages can also be 20 feet. This is a specific approval that is common throughout the North Central Overlay District. We see this often on these types of projects. Also, we see the other, one of the second of three specific approvals to the rear yard setbacks to the for the accessory structures to go from 15 to 5 feet. Again, that's another common North Central Overlay District standard that we see often, a request for specific approval to get relief from. And 15 to 5 is the consistent adjustment for that. And here's a look at those greenbelt buffers that are required in the NCO, along with the 50-foot roadway buffer. The applicant did a great job of explaining and detailing how they intend to achieve compliance with that. Down here, popped up in the bottom right-hand corner of the presentation is the typical roadway section for the proposed roads, and this is where we see the third specific approval being requested by the applicant. They're asking to go to an 11-foot travel lane width for private roads or private streets within the development. This is a standard that we've seen recently to the north that's been previously approved. Staff does not have any objection to the request for those specific approvals. And there's the two 11-foot travel lanes. And then we also see flanked on the right and left side of these two travel lanes the provided sidewalks that will be provided throughout the development. Here's a look at the sections that the specific approvals are being requested from. And I believe that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Are there any questions by the Planning Commission? Thank you very much. At this portion, I'd like to open up for any public comment. Anyone like to comment on this specific application? Please come forward. Yes, sir, can you step forward? You have to step forward, state your name. Have you been sworn? Okay. The clerk is going to have to swear you in. So right now, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to any other applications today that'll be on in front of us? Please stand and be sworn, so we don't have to do it later.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to the Planning Commission will be truthful and accurate? I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, can you state your name and that you have been sworn?
Sure, Mike Dalzell. Mike Dalzell, at 4524 Renwick Drive in Parish. So my property basically is adjacent to the new proposed. I have a couple just questions, general questions.
And you have been sworn, right?
Yes.
You have to state that for public record.
Oh,
Thank
and
you.
I have been sworn, sorry. New. So a question was, when was this property purchased by Neal Communities? Can anybody answer that?
Well, the applicant, when you get on your questions, the applicant will has some time for rebuttal. So
Okay.
they'll respond to you, and you can ask your questions, and then they'll respond after.
Okay, so that's question number one. Question
Yes,
number
sir,
two
thank
is, I noticed there's one and two-story homes I'd like to kind of know, do we get to know where those are going to be placed? And how close are those homes to the back of the homes in Renwick Drive? That's the question. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you, sir.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens like to come forward and speak on this application?
I think the gentleman was it from Canoe.
Excuse me, Mr. Neal.
Oops.
We have a gentleman. I'll give you ample time to rebuttal, sir. No worries.
Hello, my name is Stan Zagwitz. I've been sworn on at 12907 Rainwash Loop. My property is going to join the west end of development. And the question I have is, what will be the planned buffer between the two subdivisions?
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. Are there any other citizens like to come forward? Seeing that, I'll close the public comment. Applicant rebuttal. Thank you, Mr. Neal.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, for being too eager. It's my brand. I believe the gentleman is from the west of us, probably from Cross Creek. He's not a resident, to my knowledge, at Canoe Creek. Answering his question directly, Canoe Creek was approved in 2010 for 896 homes, and we've worked very well, and Ivory works terrifically well with our neighbors. I think we missed this neighbor. Two, Jeff Grebe, the seller, has been my lawyer since 1991, so I probably bought this property 30 years ago, but I really bought it in July of 2020. Three, we've been in the planning cycle for about 16 months, and we'll have only 1- and 2-story homes. Of course, Neil sells 92 or 93% one-story homes. We're primarily builders for active adults. This will be a family counterpart to our very successful Canoe Creek and will be more cost-effective, somewhat more 2-story homes, designed for families with a higher room count, but it will be, I'm going to say, a lovely Neil property. 4, answering the second gentleman's question, the Manatee County requires buffers, and Cross Creek has a buffer of 15 feet, and we too, check this fact, please, Ivory.
20 each.
Well, the correct facts are 20 feet on Medallion's Cross Creek and 20 feet for Neil's Gamble Creek.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry, sir, we've already, no, sir, I'm sorry, you already, sir, we can't speak again. Sir, sorry, thank you. Are there any staff closing comments? All right, thank you, Ms. Robinson. Is there any deliberation among the planning commission? Huh? Is there any, he gave applicant any closing comments? Thank you.
I just would make one comment.
Yes, sir.
I think we have some excellent developers in the community. Mr. Neal will be one of those. And I would recommend to anybody who has concerns that aren't vetted here satisfactorily, that you call his office. Because I believe that you'll get some response, and I think that's helpful. So I would recommend to always reach out to anybody that's submitting, because they still have to go to the commission to get approval, and they'll hear about it. So I recommend reach out to their community members, and they have to be engaged with us. So I'm sure Mr. Neal would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. So any more deliberation, any more comments?
One other question, just in general, since this is a primarily family development, can you just explain when the school enrollment capacity analysis is done, or if there's any concerns about that?
Okay, well.
Once again, Pat Neal. Happily, Ivory works with the school board, like all the time. We're meeting with Mike Pendley tomorrow. Of course, the high school, the brand-new Lakewood Ranch, the brand-new Parish Community High School has lots of capacity, almost 900 seats. The new middle school on North River Ranch, which this will probably be zoned into, will start next year for completion in 2024. And it will replace blank middle school on Mendoza Road. Can you say? the former vocational, it's named after the former vocational education leader of Manatee County, can't say his name, and Lucy B. Williams has capacity. We go through this with the team, led by Mike Pendley at the school board. We have to meet Manatee County's concurrency standards. Happily, Manatee County has worked to build capital outlay, to build new schools, particularly in the northeast sector. These are all A schools, and they all have or will have new capacity based on voters' approval of new taxes, both the penny and the new millage, to build schools in Manatee County. And we have great schools. And just for a little advertisement, people are flocking, particularly from Hillsborough County, to get to our good schools in Manatee County.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Buffalo Creek, she says.
Thank you.
And for the records, the school report is in the staff report under page 422
Ma'am, thank you.
with all the information.
All right, if there's no more deliberations or questions, what's the flavor of the planning commission?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lesline?
I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDR 2020ZG approval of general development plan with stipulations A1 through A4, B1 through B6, C1 through C5, and D1. Adoption of the findings for specific approval for granting specific approval for alternative to 1 Land Development Code section 4027D7 to reduce minimum front yard setback of 25 feet to 23 feet. And for front-loaded garages and 20 feet for side-load garages and remaining habitable portions of the structure. 2, Public Works Manual, Part 3, Section 3.1.3, to reduce the minimum required width of travel lanes for private streets from 12 feet to 11 feet. And 3, Land Development Code 40312D3K, to reduce minimum required setbacks in the NCO North Central Overlay District from 15 feet to 5 feet for swimming pools, pool cages, and other accessory structures that would potentially conflict the buffer vegetation.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. With a drink. Yes, that's the second.
Mr. Rutledge seconds. Now call to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The chair says aye also, with Chairman Connolly having to recuse and Commissioner Smock absent. Ms. Lauder, can you read item number 4 into the record, please?
Item number 4, C 2019, REAP Cream Homesite Cream Game and Routledge owners. It's a rezone of more or less 33.94 acres generally located south of Golf Course Road and having the following address: 3939, 3940, and 3780 Gamble Creek Road, Parish, Manatee County, from General Agriculture, North Central Overlay, Coastal Planning Area, Coastal Evacuation Area, and Coastal High Hazard Area Overlay District to the A Agriculture Suburban, North Central Overlay, Coastal Planning Area, Coastal Evacuation Area, Coastal High Hazard Zoning District. The case manager is Mr. Marshall Robinson, and again, represented the applicant is Ms. Anna Rittenauer and Mr. Ed Vogler.
Thank you, Ms. Leiter.
Point of information, I just want to let everybody know that this Rutledge is no way related to me. I don't know who it is, but if you want to make me a partner, I'm not. I'm not a part of that.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
not my
Rutledge. We
Rutledge.
appreciate that. Has there been any ex parte communication?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Applicant.
Once again, Anna Rittenauer, certified planner with Clearview Land Design, and I have been sworn. This project is slightly related to the last item on your agenda, but a little disjointed, so we would ask that we do a separate presentation. So the property owners here are requesting to rezone the property from A, general agriculture, to A1, agriculture suburban, in order to keep the property in compliance with LDC, to not create non-conforming parcels. The aerial map here shows the subject property outline, and I'll kind of get into the genesis of this unique boundary over the next couple slides. Here's kind of a general area map to give you for reference. So the property owners collectively owned the area in blue and green together, and The area in blue was just recently approved in August for the Phase 4 of Canoe Creek. In orange, you see the previous phases of Canoe Creek, and that's just a continuation of that development. And then Gamble Creek Farms, of course, is shown in red that you just approved. So the green property is the remaining retained property by the owners, and in order to keep that conforming with the Land Development Code, we are now requesting a rezone from the A zoning district general agriculture to A1 agriculture suburban, because there's a smaller parcel or lot size requirement for that zoning district. So here is the existing zoning map. You can see that plan developments are surrounding the property completely. There is some other agriculture zone property to the west. And then the proposed rezoning, just, again, this is just a Euclidean rezoning, straight rezone from A to A1 to keep the property in conformance with the Land Development Code. And then, of course, the future land use map, this is in the Urban Fringe 3 future land use category, along with all of the surrounding properties. So with that, we would respectfully request your recommendation of approval, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, Ed Vogler, I have been sworn. To supplement this application and presentation, I'd just like to observe that this is a straight rezoning. We don't see a lot of those without a plan. And so the detailed staff report shows you that there are uses allowed in an A1 zoning district, and some of those uses could be commercial. But we do not meet the commercial locational criteria and would never meet the commercial locational criteria for this particular property because of how it's configured. So therefore, even though the straight zoning district would allow, in theory, the presentation of a commercial use, that could not occur here. The second thing that's notable, even though we are essentially increasing the density by going from 1 unit per 5 acres to 1 unit per acre by virtue of the district change, we have to accommodate the extensive wetlands that are on this site. And therefore, the maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per acre is not achievable. Now, of course, anybody that would want to view additional development would need to come back through the process to seek those entitlements. But considering one of the things that we worry about here is when you have straight rezoning, what's going to happen? And I think you can look at the location and configuration of this property and realize that this is just a family that has sold a big stake of their holdings here to Neal Communities, for which we've now had 2 projects approved. Canoe Creek Phase 4 has board approval, preliminary site plan, and today you've just approved the Gamble Creek side of this project with a general development plan for 266 residential units. While these are coming through separately, as they must, we, as a Neal Communities team, have master planned these areas. And so these particular lots and structures that will exist on this rezoned parcel will take access through our Canoe Creek Phase 4 project and its roadways, providing access to Golf Course Road, and that is approved and in place right now. The only other thing I'd like to add is that these parcels are under contract. The parcels that Mr. Neal was testifying to are under contract and have not closed. But this particular land that is the subject of this rezoning application will remain in the Grebe and Keene family ownership and is not subject to acquisition at this time, at least by us. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Straight rezoning along the Gamble Creek. They simply want to preserve their structures that they have and their lifestyle. And we've promised to be good neighbors and had a good relationship with the Grebe and Keene family over an extended period of time as we've pursued these approvals, and we hope that you'll act favorably.
Thank you, Mr. Vogler. Are there any questions of the applicant?
I'm not sure I understand. Sorry. Why are you doing this?
We're rezoning it to allow increased density, in theory, and to,
In fact, not in
No,
theory, I mean,
well-
in fact, you were doing that, so. It says minor.
the way you realize that is by bringing a plan forward, of course. But,
Understand.
so the opportunity to do so
Accept it.
in a UF 3 future land use category. And they have several structures on this property that that could be improved and used and divided if they wanted to. And so that's one of the reasons. And you have to do that Mr. Rutledge, I guess, to get a little deeper in the weeds, it's part of the staff report's been detailed pretty in depth. There are several provisions that limit your ability to have a lot when there are extensive wetlands that exist on the property and that exist here in this case.
Right.
And so therefore, if you look at 30 acres, you say, well, you can have 5 easy, right? Well, not necessarily, right? Because you've got to configure around the wetlands. So if you want to do that, you have to change the zoning district. And having said that, there's certainly nothing wrong with increasing the density on this, allowable density on this site, when you've got these sort of major PDRs next to you, right, that are compatible. And so, but that's the motivating reason for it. And when we started the acquisition process with this family, we outlined all of this, and we've committed to bring this zoning forward on their behalf and to integrate them through access into our communities and to make sure that their lifestyle on this property doesn't change as a result of what we've been doing next door.
You good?
Doesn't it answer?
That's an answer. I hear you.
Well, frame a specific question. I don't.
No, I understand. Here's the
Physical
question.
look
So when
is
I
not
look at
good.
this photograph, it looks like it's all wetlands. And Neil's rightly purchased the things he can really build on with density and so forth. So when I look at this wetlands, my concern is what we had happen recently, which I voted against, I was one of the few, but where adjacent property said, well, I want to take the zoning and approvals I got here and I want to connect them because I'm the only connected land to that.
You're almost always right.
You were
But this
certainly
time I
not my
think you're
wife.
dead wrong. I just want to say that, okay? There are some beautiful houses on this property. The original one was built by Senator Wilbur Boyd in the 60s and sold to the Greebies in 1969. There's a beautiful house on uplands with a road built through wetlands in the 60s to it. There's a second house that's a nice house also on uplands. And there's a third house that's going to be reconstructed. And there's going to be a log cabin that we moved from the big property onto the property. So this is the Greebies' home place. They're nice houses. They are kind of formerly wetlands, but they're not wetlands anymore. And we're trying to make arrangements for 4 homes, which the various Greebies will retain as part of their personal ownership. It's in our responsibility under our contract for purchase and sale to go through this process. And we've been through it, and it's been kind of complicated, but we think we're there, or almost there yet. Mr. Rutledge, we've worked hard to give it good access, emergency access, fire access, water, and all the amenities they need for living in their beautiful rural setting adjacent to our beautiful new community. These are homes, and most of them exist.
And so, I'm sorry, not a question for you. I'm sorry.
I'd like to supplement that because Ed Vogler, I don't like quizzical looks on our planning commissioners' faces, but.
You better get used to that.
So there's another element of this that probably should be discussed. When the surrounding properties are rezoned as they have, it creates a nonconformity on this property. It creates it, right? And so to avoid the nonconformity, you have to seek a rezoning. And it has to do with the extensive amount of wetlands that are on the property, right? So what we've said to the Greeby family is we'll come forward through this process, but we're not going to create a nonconformity for you. We're going to rezone your property. so that the structures that are on your property can continue to conform. And that's pretty important. It's very important to them.
Sure.
And it's pretty important in land planning. And I just don't see any real downside to this. But
So here's my concern. So they're grandfathered in. You're not going to, the county's not going to make them move their houses out of there. So they,
yeah,
sorry.
but grandfathered in, you can't, there's limitations on improvements,
Well, I
there's
understand that.
limitations on maintenance. I mean, I would not want to have a grandfathered structure, okay, period.
Well, again, I'm just saying that's the case today. I understand you don't like that, but that's what's there. And the fact that we just voted to have a non-conforming use adjacent to it, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But my concern is that this is basically all wetlands, and the change in zoning and the change in uses and all that, to me, seem like something that in a year or two, they're going to come back and say, oh, by the way, we're going to put a medical office here because it's a great rehab facility and this environment's great. And we have no way of going back and saying, well, that wasn't the intent. Ed Vogler told us we're going to do this. And so that's my concern. I love if what you say is absolutely the only thing that could happen, great, but that's not what it says. Okay, so that's my concern.
So in theory, we should never have a straight rezone, you know, because that's.
That's not what I said, Ed, don't say that.
That's the end of the game on that discussion. And,
Okay.
and look, you know, we have swung in this county on that, you know? General development plan, preliminary site plan, what level of detail, where are the mailboxes, you know?
I agree.
So on this one, Commissioner Rutledge, the location of this property and the configuration of the wetlands on this property and the inability to meet commercial locational criteria will and should eliminate those real and theoretical concerns. And when you look at every straight rezone, you should have those questions in your mind, because you're right. And you said it earlier in the public hearing in the other matter. And so I agree with you that, philosophical discussion just for a minute.
Yes, sir.
I agree with you that having the planning commission and having the ability for people to come down and to speak and to get a notice is really valuable. And I think that's valuable. But I don't think we're doing injustice to it here.
And may I, and again, I don't want to be argumentative, but I was a developer for a long time. It fosters great creativity. Fair? Okay. And so my concern is, I look at this parcel of land, I think it's fantastic. I love that there's long-term history. That's great, and I like all that. But what we have is we have two silos you can be, A or A1. And in the A1, it goes from something, that's what I see and what I like and what I would like to see it there, to an A1, which has a whole list of other things that are available. And I have a sensitivity to that. And I think it's an appropriate question. Whether the outcome is right or wrong, we'll know in 15 years. It's just a concern. If nobody else cares, I'm fully acquiescing to the board. But I think it ought to be raised, and you ought to say, no, we have no intention of ultimately putting a medical facility back there that would benefit from the landscaping and so forth, because now we can get X number of units per acre, we stack them up there, and it's a facility. I've done that, okay? So I'm saying it could happen, correct? Intellectually, we're not talking about this one.
I don't really if someone came into my office and asked me, could I put a medical office building there? My instinct would be to say no, and it'd be very difficult. If it's precluded, I don't think I could go that far. But I think that, to the extent that I've been involved in this from the very beginning, I think I can make those assurances to you of the process that we've been in and the communication that the Grebe and Keene families have informed us of, and the goals that we have relative to preserving the structures that they have there, one of which is a log home that is going to be moved. So, yeah, Vogler saying it on the record here probably doesn't mean all that much.
No, I respect you. It's not that.
But that's where we were, where we are today, and why we're here.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate very much you considering my thoughts on this, because the code's the code. I get that.
Yep.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to staff presentation. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Again, Marshall Robinson, Development Services, and I have been sworn. I think we all know where this property is. I would like to touch on a couple of things that were mentioned. And it is what can happen on the property. This is a Euclidean zoning, and it is standard rezoning, so they don't have any general development plans or preliminary site plans that would come with the rezoning request. What we have here is just the entitlement of what you can and cannot do on a piece of property, and that's all determined by the comprehensive plan, beginning with UF3, the future land use designation. As Mr. Fogler correctly stated, the site is constrained in such a way by our comprehensive plan that I don't know that any non-residential uses or commercial uses, as it's subject to the locational criteria, would be viable. There are some office opportunities, and I think that the market would kind of determine the feasibility of this location for things like a medical office, as previously mentioned. We do have the smaller lot size in the A1 zoning district. You have a minimum lot size of 1 acre as opposed to 5 acres in the A zoning district. The applicant on the previous project has provided emergency access, providing access over to the subject property with the 40-foot easement that was previously mentioned. The A1 zoning district is also an implementing zoning district of the future land use category in the UF3. We see that here on the table in Table 4-1 of our Land Development Code. So it is to say that the A1 zoning district could be looked at as an implementing mechanism of the future land use designation here. So it makes it suitable as a request to rezone to. Let's see what else is in here. So we do have some water and sewer out here in terms of utilities. There's existing county-owned 30-inch water main within the Golf Course Road right-of-way on the south side and east of Spencer Parish Road. Existing county-owned 16-inch is stubbed out to the west of Spencer Parish Road within Golf Course Road right-of-way. We got a 12-inch force main within Golf Course Road. I got a master plan calls for an 8-inch parallel force main within the Golf Course Road right-of-way. So we do have utilities out here on the property. And as previously discussed this morning, there is a 50% reduction in pre-developed runoff rate for this property. And looks like it is in the X and AE, regulatory floodway of Gamble Creek. Here we take a look at the nearby development. You know, the PDs that were previously mentioned this morning surround the property. They're all in the UF3. Most of them are in the NCO overlay district, which provides more restrictive treatments to the development. And staff doesn't see any issue, I don't want to say any issue, but staff does not see any rubs against the code or the comp plan by asking to go to A1 in the UF3 zoning district under a standard rezoning. If it were a PD request or maybe a preliminary site plan or something, we could get in the weeds on some more detail. But being as how it's a standard rezoning, absence of those details in the plan, we check it against the comp plan, we check it against the land development code, and we determine if compliance is achieved with what they've submitted, and that is the case here. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, but that concludes most of the information I have.
Are there any questions from the Planning Commission for staff?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
At this point, again, if there's any public comment or anyone from the public that would like to come down and speak to this application, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll go to applicant rebuttal. Okay, thank you very much. Is there any staff closing comments, Ms. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
You good? All right, thank you very much. Any more deliberation among the Planning Commission? Or I'll look for a motion or entertain what the Planning Commission would like to do.
Mr. Chair.
Can I ask the board, nobody else has the concerns that I raised? They don't seem to bother anybody? Okay.
No. That shouldn't bother me.
Okay.
All right, can I have a motion or?
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County zoning ordinance number Z 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Delesline. And can I have is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Roth, thank you very much. All those in favor, say aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0, and Commissioner Connolly is recused, and Commissioner Schmock has been absent. So thank you very much. And I'm turning it back over to our esteemed chairman.
A steamy chairman.
Yeah, thank you. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 5.
Put enough people with them.
Mr. Ron, which item are we on? My
You're
computer
on
locked up.
number 5, sir.
All right, item number 5.
Item number 5, PDR 2101P, Cedar Run Phase 2, Cedar Run Condominium Association owner. A preliminary site plan for the development of 16 multifamily residential units. 8 units are already existing on more or less 2.05 acres in the planned development residential zoning district. The property is generally located more or less a half-mile north of 53rd Avenue West, along to the west frontage of 66th Street West, with an address commonly known as 2734 49th Avenue West, Bradenton. This is a quasi-judicial case. Mr. Marshall Robinson is the case manager, and he represented the owner, that is Mr. Fenter, and Mr. Richard Claiborne.
Very good, thank you. All right. Mr. Claybrook, are you going to be introducing the application again?
It's for tape.
Oh,
For
I'm
the
sorry.
record.
Before we get started, again, this is quasi-judicial. Have there been any ex parte communications regarding this application?
No, sir.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. For the record, my name is Richard Claybrook, and I have been sworn. This is a continuance of an item that came up in last month's Planning Commission meeting on the 10th of November. So I'm not going to take up a bunch of time going through a whole other presentation and showing you. Essentially, what's going on here is the Phase 2 Cedar Run condominium. This Cedar Run condominiums was 4 phases. It was approved in the 1980s. They only built Cedar Run 1, Phase 1, and that building has been in existence. The owner of Cedar Run Phase 1 wants to add a similar building adjacent to it in Phase 2, and in doing so, they are upgrading the property of Phase 1, including the entranceway in and the parking, and they're bringing everything up to code. This particular development, there were 2 issues that came up in that presentation in November. The first was that the property line against the Parkwood Plaza property, which is the east property line of the Phase 2 development, that was in question. We brought a surveyor with us, and I have the owner with me here as well today to comment on that particular issue. And then the second issue dealt with the easements and the accesses that were available to Phases 3 and 4, which are not being developed. The property owner there came up and issued or expressed his concern regarding the entranceway and the parking there. And as I stated in that meeting, we are aware of those easements. The site plan that we presented took those easements into account, and we are just upgrading and putting into code the parking and driveway that was there, that is there today, that needs to be reworked, and none of that effort will affect Phases 3 and 4. Actually, the buffer that was originally asked by the county, that would in fact be in front of Phases 3 and 4, and we asked that that not be a buffer in that area because we wanted to make sure we did not affect Phases 3 and 4. And with that, I will open it up to questions. One other thing I have with me today, I have the owner of the property and I have the owner's attorney.
Very good, thank you. All right, I'll just open it up. As I recall, I don't know that we had too many questions or concerns regarding the form of the proposed improvements that the rezone would authorize. think it was more a concern regarding the associated rights that might be impacted, or there was a question. I think there was some
Adjacent.
clarification with regard to the rights associated with this. Just very, very briefly, I think one of the questions that we asked is if there was a survey prepared with benefit of title that was utilized when the site plan was prepared. Can you speak to that question that I remember I think I asked at the previous hearing?
That's correct. And yes, as a confirmation of that conversation, the survey that was used for the site development for the plans was performed by a licensed surveyor and was in fact certified to the owner of the property. So
And it was done with benefit of title.
that is my understanding, yes.
Who can speak to that? That was the answer last time that I.
Right,
Yeah.
yes. The owner is here today, and
Yes.
I believe he can come and speak to it.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael Fenton. I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
Cedar Run Condominium Association President, owner of Gulf Coast Turnkeys. I own the entire project that we're here to speak about. I spoke to Leo Mills in regards to the survey and the concerns that the Planning Commission had. He reassured me he followed all state-specific guidelines, that there are a number of individual markers along the property line that is only 80 feet in length, and that the need for an ULTA or a boundary survey would not do anything differently for the property or for the project. That being said, the person who spoke about the boundary was not specifically stating a property line. He misspoke. What he was concerned about is where some plants are, which is a landscaping easement, which is a civil issue between two neighbors. It is not a boundary line dispute. I wish I was here last month. I had some family matters I was not able to attend. But this is something that will get, a boundary line survey will be when the property gets ready to pour foundation, and there are multiple sign-offs that have to happen before any CO is issued. We actually have final site plans from 2006. This project has been here 3 different times. It's been through preliminary site plans 3 different times. And it is the same exact plan that I have submitted to you with the same boundary line as well.
Okay. And my question had nothing to do with the boundary survey. It was the ALTA. Was it done with benefit of title? Which is, yeah, I see Mr. Mills walked up, so.
I'll let my surveyor speak.
Yeah. Mr. Mills, I know you understand what I'm asking, so if you could, please clarify.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you. Leo Mills. I am the surveyor in question here.
And you have been sworn?
I have been sworn, yes, sir. Note number 4 on the boundary and topographic survey that
Yes,
was
sir.
used identifies that this survey was a product of a title commitment.
Okay, all right. And it's current?
Well, it's current is a.
I know it's
wasn't done
relative, but-
yesterday, but
Yeah.
we are looking at a survey that was certified in 1920.
Okay.
2020, I'm sorry.
All right, I was going to say that a lot.
1820.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot can
I
happen.
look good, don't I? Yeah.
No, sir.
Whose company?
So the questions I was trying to ask previously, if there was consideration of the rights associated within the property itself, and then those rights that were granted outside of the property to the applicant. And I didn't get a clear understanding if there had been some analysis associated with that. And there were representations from neighbors that, maybe rights were being not respected. So that's what I was trying to get to, is understanding what legal rights were granted to the parties. So
I'm not an attorney, so speaking of legal rights is a little bit above my pay grade. But from a standpoint of the rights that were identified inside of the title commitment, that we were able to graphically depict, they are graphically depicted on here. If they were not able to be graphically depicted. They were noted in note form within the surveyor's notes here. All considerations within the title commitment were identified on the survey here.
Okay, and I'll amend my question/comment to be rights associated with property granted through the.
And I will tell you that Michael contacted me. I haven't seen another survey. I haven't talked to another surveyor, but if there is a conflict and they want to bring forth a survey and discuss it with me, I'll be happy to do it.
Again, that there were representations. I felt like we didn't have a clear understanding of what was appropriate or correct. So I appreciate the clarification. Thank you. All right.
Any other questions?
I don't think related to that matter.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Board.
Thank you. All right. Any additional? Those were mainly the questions that I had related to this matter. Mr.
So
Rutledge.
are you going to ask the attorney to comment about the legal rights portion or not?
We will get into that just to get it on the record, but is there anything else associated? I mean, any other questions? I know it's been a month and a lot has happened since then, but I'm just trying to remember what I was.
So my question is, the people that represented the conflict are not here today, right? And so my concern a little bit is, no matter what you.
Well, we'll open it up for public.
I'm just trying to make sure that it's okay for you all to say all that, no personal offense, but I want to make sure that the people that you're saying it about have had the opportunity to communicate their thoughts, that's all.
Right, and just so I can maybe rehash what I was thinking, again, we're going through a process that is authorizing something to occur. What I was hoping to avoid with some clarification is that process doesn't violate somebody's rights that are within the property.
Exactly, okay.
And one of the mechanisms we can do that with is an ALTA survey, because it's going to identify easements that have been granted.
Buildings,
So that was kind of the questioning we just had there. Again, for the applicant's attorney, related to the site plan that's been presented, the ALTA survey, is it your opinion that all rights have been respected with regard to the property rights associated with the application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Andrew Rosen on behalf of the owner. I have been sworn here today.
Thank you.
And yes, my review of the survey and my review of all the easements and respective rights and remedies are protected therein.
Is it your understanding that the folks that had previous concerns that they've expressed, that their concerns were addressed through the application or the plan that was presented, or were they not founded, some of the concerns?
Some of the concerns are unfounded, and some of them are already addressed in there. Utilities are already there, which was mentioned in the last. Access, ingress and egress is already in the plans. None of those are prohibited with what my client is seeking.
Okay, so where there are easements granted within the property and coincidental to development that might occur should this application go forward, does that infringe or impact the rights associated with the easements they may be crossing, or the rights that have been granted in the past through those easements?
No.
So, okay, all right, very good.
Excuse me, you're a lawyer, right?
Yes.
You're licensed in Florida?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. It's a great first name, but I didn't know that.
Understood.
Very good. All right, thank you. All right, is there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Roth?
Have I won't call them opponents, but have the people who were contesting this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Have the people who have been contesting this been satisfied? Or are they still out there screaming in you?
I think we have one in the room. We'll allow him to answer that, but have you had any communication with other?
I have had no communications with Mr. Perone, who represents the adjacent landowner, who was here last time.
Okay.
Excuse me, one other question for you then. Is that your typical conduct in making a submission, that you would not communicate with people that represented concerns about the situation? I mean.
We have a civil matter between the parties, and so I think a lot of that is bleeding over into the planning. They're separate and distinct, and I think, it's like somebody who buys a property next to a dairy farm and now is complaining that there's a dairy farm there.
That's very clarifying, because might be disputes, we want to know about what we're doing on the mechanics of your rights. And if they have a dispute with that, that's something other than that. But we just want to make sure our conditions and approvals are based on what your entitlements are until further litigation or whatever, until final.
And that's correct.
And that's how you feel? You're
Yes,
confident in
correct.
that?
Yes.
And as an attorney, you're representing that to us?
That's correct.
Okay.
Very good, thank you. All right, if there's nothing further for the applicant at the moment, we're going to go ahead and go to staff. Mr. Robinson, was there anything additional that you'd like to add to the discussion as it's a continuance, maybe something for the record?
Before Mr. Marshall,
Yes, ma'am.
Robinson, I would like to add that the case was properly advertised and notified in the regular way that we do it.
Okay, very
The
good.
neighbors or the other part has to be already in notice of the hearing today.
Very good, thank you.
Just a follow-up on that, how are the abutting or adjoining properties notified? Is it a letter directly to them, or is it newspaper advertising, or how are they notified?
We notify with 500 feet of the property line, and this has to be notified.
And the noticing consists of mailings and for advertising in the paper for a
And
period of
signage.
time,
That is correct.
and signage, I believe, is that correct?
Signage is this big, this high, yellow, red letters.
Yeah, the form of sign is pretty consistent, so you
Plus
may not,
the last hearing was continuing, and is what we are doing.
You had
Follow
to
the
re-advertise,
instructions
yeah.
that was set in that day.
very good, thank you. Mr. Robinson, anything additional?
Mr. Connolly, I don't have anything additional. As we mentioned, this is, but you know what? I do this every time. I got an email I got to hand out to everybody. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, I know we have we received the package separately that looked like it was information associated with the private hearing.
There's no penalty.
Can't reach that.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, can you explain what this is while you give us cover to read it?
Yes, this is an email that was sent by Dr. Michael Spellman, who was made part of the record in the last meeting with his testimony. Read the email. Let Mr. Spellman or Dr. Spellman speak to why he sent it, but it was as a follow-up to the meeting that we had last month. In regards to, do I have anything further? I think we're talking about a couple of things. The zoning and the preliminary site plan or the general development plan that's being proposed here. So we have the zoning side of things, and then we have this other conversation that's happening about easements and property rights. And as a planner, as a land use planner, Rosina and I discussed about, not really know where the zoning issue is in those things. And so I don't really have a whole lot of analysis, to give you on the easements and the access rights of the neighboring properties. And I think that's the reason why the meeting got continued and we were to reconvene when they were able to bring their subject matter experts in here to speak more smartly on the topics. So I was hoping that's what we were going to achieve today, but I'm certainly prepared to talk about the zoning and talk about the proposed request for phases 1 and 2 as it relates to the multifamily development.
Very good. Mr. Rutledge?
I had some questions for staff, just to get on the record.
Yes, ma'am, please.
So the phases, is it phases 2 and 3, they're not included in the site plan, correct?
3 and 4.
And the phases 3 and 4 were the ones that the opposition spoke about at the last meeting?
That's correct, ma'am.
And is the applicant showing on the site plan any obstructions to the easements that prohibit access?
No, ma'am. As a matter of fact, we worked with the applicant to offer a specific approval along the southern boundary of Phase 1, which provides the ingress-egress driveway in and out of the property. Normally, we would require a buffer there to include any VUA or vehicle use area buffering. But we went forward with a specific approval, and in the event that any future development were to occur, the applicant expressed to us that, he wasn't interested in putting any landscape in there, because if somebody came in on 3 and 4, that he certainly wouldn't want to impede their access if they were able to achieve rights of access to 3 and 4.
Okay, in your opinion, does the project have a means of access to the applicable road?
It does.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
A question for Ms. Shank, if I could.
Mr. Rutledge.
So, Ms. Shank, if it were to occur on a particular project, that we approved a zoning that met our criteria, was reviewed, and with the presentation of materials provided at that time, were thus approved, and ultimately there were a form of litigation or something that changed the conditions, how is that treated in the county?
Well, I briefly looked at the pleadings the opposition submitted, and they're having a financial dispute on who's going to pay for certain improvements. They have a cost-sharing agreement that really requires them to agree with each other. At the one point in time, their predecessors in title may have gotten along together. Their relationship has disintegrated
Things change, right?
drastically under the pleadings. So there's no stipulation here that talks about those easements, so there wouldn't be any stipulation changed no matter how that litigation turns out. The testimony appears to indicate that to bring the property up to code, they have to pave the access to make it accessible by vehicles, emergency vehicles, and so forth.
So
And so they're pursuing that.
if I simplify Mr. Robinson's comments, they've reviewed it for the conditions that they're requesting from us. They've said the zoning meets this criteria, it meets the standard, you think it's acceptable for the community. And if there are other conditions that neighbors fight about, the height of their fence, the sound of their music, that's not within our preview to consider at this point, and only to make a recommendation to the board that we think the zoning is correct. Is that,
Yeah, I
Mr.
just want to
Robinson?
clarify, this is approval of preliminary site plan. They have the zoning already,
Okay, so, sorry, I misspoke,
zone PDR.
as often, I do.
Is this on? But yes, you're correct. We already have the zoning in place. This is simply because the previous plan, as the applicant stated, was a while ago, it expired. And now that he wants to come in and do something on that piece of property, he can't do it with an expired plan, so he has to get a new one approved. And we check that against the same thing that it's been checked against the previous couple of times, which is the PDR zoning district and the comprehensive plan and access, all the buffering and all the screening, the height limitations, the height bulk and standards that go with the zoning district.
Gotcha.
And then, if any easements were to appear, we would certainly review those. And we did in the first review of this.
Gotcha.
My layman's eye, because I'm not a surveyor, but I looked at it and didn't raise a whole lot of questions about it, because everything that the applicant had showed appeared to be on property he owned.
Okay.
And so any relief by way of specific approval that we did to the preliminary site plan was only in the efforts to be able to accommodate future development in and around the area. Phases 3 and 4 down there look to be landlocked.
Gotcha.
And the only access would have to come in from the applicant's driveway, or perhaps the adjacent property to the east of 3 and 4, which could be maybe achieved through some sort of cross-access agreement between the two owners, or with himself if he owns it.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but everything that we've reviewed is all within the terms and confines of the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan, and access is certainly a part of that. But when it's achieved through private easements recorded, we didn't see that as a zoning issue or a Land Development Code issue. We thought that was a separate issue.
Okay, thanks.
right.
Perfect, thanks.
Questions? Good. Okay. Anything additional from staff?
No, sir.
Very good, thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. I have a couple of speaker cards. What I'll do is I'll call the folks I have, and then we'll open it up to anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward. So the first speaker card I have is Corey Foster. If you could, please come forward and state your name and that you have been sworn.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, my name is Corey Foster, and I'm an attorney with Barnes Walker. I work with Andre Perone, who I've heard mentioned a couple times,
And you have been sworn.
and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
So, as you all have mentioned a couple times, Mr. Perone spoke last time at the November 10th meeting about, on behalf of Mr. Lucian Latrell and Latrell Properties about this issue. So our firm is representing Latrell Properties and Mr. Latrell in this matter and the civil matter that Mr. Perone did actually make the council aware to last time and even presented the complaint and entered that into evidence. So you should have received that. So that issue is not separate from this matter because it's not just a financial issue that's being decided there. The rights and responsibilities of the parties are being decided in court in that issue. And the one of our major objections to this plan going through is that depending on what the court decides the parties' rights and responsibilities are, could impact the site plan, will impact the site plan. As Ms. Shank, I believe it's pronounced, brought up, part of the responsibilities that are detailed in the easement agreements is that the parties have to come to some sort of agreement on what is going to happen with these easements and this particular property. But the issue is because my client in Latrell Properties was not involved in any of the discussions prior to the site plan being submitted, and even after that November 10th hearing, that agreement has been made. And depending on what the court decides in this matter, in this complaint, this plan would have to change. So again, we're going to have to object based on those easements, which I did bring again. These were also entered into evidence last time, so you should again have a copy of these, but I brought a copy of these again. The rights and responsibilities are still being determined, and until that point, we have to object. And we were under the impression that the team in the county would contact us and contact Mr. Latrell so that we can decide those things together and we can have those conversations. And Mr. Perone actually sent an email to the county with as you can see, a ton of concerns that we would like to address with the county, and we got no response from that email. So again, before the site plan can go through, these decisions have to be made. First of all, starting with that court decision. Once that comes through, this plan is going to have to be changed. And so we, again, would like the decision to either be postponed or denied until some of these decisions can be made, until the case is concluded, until Mr. Latrell can be involved in these decisions in Latrell Properties in accordance with the responsibility, with the rights that he has, that Latrell Properties has under these easement agreements. Until Mr. Latrell can be involved in these decisions, we'd ask that it be postponed or that the decision be denied. And I think that's it. I think my time is done. So,
Just a question. Can you please clarify what you feel gives Mr. Latrell the right to be a party to the process, this process with this property?
So again, we believe that that's the language of the easement agreement, but more importantly, we are litigating that right now, which is a complaint. I didn't bring the answer, but again, I believe it was entered last time, and that is what we're litigating right now. It's not simply just a financial matter. We're trying to establish that we do have that right, and until that decision is made, which we believe that we have the right because we, as Ms. Shank pointed out, and as the language of the easement agreement says, the parties do have to come into an agreement about some of these decisions. And so that is a right of Mr. Latrell and Latrell's properties. And once that decision is determined by the court, then the site plan can be updated with Mr. Latrell's input or according to the court decision either way. But until that time, we think it's too early to approve the site plan.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for?
I have one question.
Is it something that is appropriate to ask?
Relevant?
I guess my question is actually for Ms. Shank, but maybe I should.
Chair, I really rather
Yeah.
wait until we finish public comment and I
Yeah.
can respond.
Okay, all right. So, thank you. Thank you. All right, the other speaker card I have is Brittany Meyer. If you could come forward, state your name and that you have been sworn.
Hello, I'm Brittany Meyer, Manatee County resident. I have been sworn.
Thank you.
I am a broker associate at Boyd Realty. I have done some transactions with Mr. Fenton over the years. Particularly in this instance, Mr. Fenton bought Phase 2 from the Phase 3-4 owners. Immediately after, he wanted to buy Phase 3 and 4, but the seller marked it up 800%. This is financial. The easement has to do with financial contribution. He doesn't want to help pay for the drives. He doesn't want to sell the lots at market value. This is kind of what this is all boiling down to. Mr. Fenton just wants to get his project through. Neighbors are causing issues. The other neighbor last night emailed him and offered him to buy that little sliver of land for $40,000, I believe. So I just wanted to add this for context. He'd like the land, he'd like those properties. It's not happening. I did file a code enforcement complaint on the neighbors. He had let homeless camps happen there. The homeless people jump in the pool over at Cedar Run. It's a mess. That's all. That's all I want to say is this is just more than just, you know, they're having issues with, it all comes down to money. They want more money. So, thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, I have no more speaker cards, so if there's anybody else who wishes to come forward, if you would, just come forward, state your name, that you have been sworn, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Good morning. My name is Mike Spellman. I'm the president of the Parkwood Professional Center Condominium Association group that represents groups like Manatee County Medical Society, a bunch of other professionals. I had a bunch of notes, but I'm going to get off of them because there were some things said that I do believe need to be responded. First of all, we have no civil actions with Michael. We're good with what he's trying to do. We'd like to see that neighborhood come up. We've invested fairly sizable sums of money in the same direction. We're trying to get that whole route to the college buffed up. The zoning issue isn't, in my mind, a question. It's zoned appropriately as best as my layman's eyes can see. The development issue is at question. The size of the property necessarily causes other problems for adjoining neighbors, including Parkwood. And I don't believe to this moment that the survey that was requested has been provided. I heard Mr. Owen say that there was a reference somewhere buried deep in, 400 pages worth of materials, but frankly, I didn't see it, and I still see, having looked even harder, discrepancies between different documents showing different latitudes and longitudes and different property lines. Michael just got done, Mr. Fenton just got done saying that I may have misunderstood or misspoke last time. I didn't misspeak. If you look at the documents that are available and hold them up, I have pictures if you want to see them. Yes, the vegetation is what cued me that there was a boundary intrusion, but it's pretty clear. It's not a matter of inches, it's not a matter of feet, it's a matter of a couple of yards that basically will render our land useless. My main concern, if you approve this new site development, it will, as I understand, have to be done to current code. There is a 12-foot easement through our property that we can live with. We can still use that parcel of land to make additional parking. And as I said, we're trying to develop that corridor as well, so we're bringing in new owners, we're bringing in new buildings. We need the additional parking. If that parcel becomes a 20-foot easement, which with code would require, that parcel becomes totally worthless for that purpose. The only reason I offered Michael a sale last night, which was not in our thinking, is to prevent a fight. I mean, I just would rather not have a fight. But it's not about money for us. It's about we need the parking or we need the resources to find an alternative solution to the parking. I do not believe the I'm floored by how locked out everybody has been. I want to echo a prior speaker. This has been as closed door as nobody reaches out in the months since the last thing. I've reached out several times and had no response, had to put in a Freedom of Information request to get information. I really urge the commission to consider citizen input and consider the possibility that there's errors in such a large document.
Thank you. For clarification, you represent Parkwood Professional Center condominium. That's the area just north of, I guess it's adjacent to, is it 26th? That goes from 26th to the,
26th to 27th, 48th Avenue to 49th Avenue.
all right. And you mentioned something having to be brought up to code. And is the area you're referring to, is that property owned by the applicant, or is that property that's owned by the professional center?
The problem, if I understand it, and Michael, please correct me if I'm misspeaking, there's only one route of ingress egress into the property, and Cedar Hammock wants two routes. They want an alternate escape route or an alternate entry route. The agreement made back in the 80s was that there would be a 12-foot run. Basically, 27th Street dead ends just before our property, dead ends into our property. So you'd have to cross a bit of our property, our parking lot, basically, to get to a Greenland. And through that Greenland is a 12-foot easement that satisfied the firefighters' needs and interests. That, if I understand correctly, would have to be expanded to 20 feet if the building of the currently proposed size is approved.
Okay. And you mentioned areas that related to survey. Are you talking about survey of your property?
I'm a layman, sir, so
Okay.
all I can go on is the documents I see in the packets
Okay.
and the documents that are readily available on the public record. The plat, both Cedar Run's and our plat maps are way different than what you see in what's being proposed. To my layman, and again, I'm just not a surveyor, I'm a layman.
Right. I guess maybe the more appropriate way to ask that is, have you engaged with a surveyor to maybe collect your own information?
We are hoping to come to solutions that don't require that. If this gets out of hand, obviously, we'll at some point have to do that.
Right. Do you know if the easement that was granted to the applicant was an exclusive easement or not?
If I understand how that term applies in that context, I believe the answer is yes.
Okay. Then, okay, all right. I'll leave it at that. All right. Anything? I know this kind of got a little bit protracted, but thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I'm going to leave a summary of my comments because 3 minutes against all that testimony was.
Very good. And if you provide it to the clerk of the court, it'll end up being entered into the record. All right. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward? Okay, seeing no one else come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. And Ms. Shank, I think there was a question directed at you.
I was just going to say that staff's been advised they don't hold neighborhood meetings. Their testimony is under oath at these hearings, the planning commission and the board. It's up to the applicant. They want to hold a neighborhood meeting to try to have a resolution of the access issue before the board. That's their discretion, but neighborhood meetings are not required.
Right.
Applicants are optional under the code.
And I believe there was something related to a public records request. I think the county typically provides anything that's been submitted to them that's consistent with the application. If it's submitted to the county, it's
I didn't hear
available.
anything about public records.
Right. But my question is, if it's submitted to the county, it's available. But if it's something that's not submitted, we have no obligation, or I guess the applicant wouldn't have an obligation to provide that information. Is that
The
Generally-
general coordinator handles the public records requests for the county, so the staff knows to forward any requests through her.
okay?
And the other comment was, the applicant proceeds at their own risk. They want to proceed to get a final site plan, construction plan, construct this while they're in litigation, and there's a risk the plan may have to change. That's their risk. We don't decide risk for the applicant.
I was just going to say that's my experience has always been that you proceeded at your own peril.
Correct.
You can get a permit, that doesn't mean you should necessarily do it. So
Timing's up
that's
to the applicant, the timing of their project. They may just want to get through public hearings, they may wait and then do litigation. I don't know what their plans are, that's up to them.
And I would go back to our staff members, the recommendations, the positive aspects versus the negative aspects, which I think are the same ones we always hear, are very within the confines of the recommended approval. So I appreciate the difficulty of neighbors. I've worked on projects where there's 6 property owners. It's not all that much fun. But I think our obligation is to provide the rights that that property has. And if there's a dispute about other things other than the zoning, we know what should and how the site plan should be developed. I don't see that that is in our preview, and I would think that legal, we don't opine on that. I try not to.
And to further clarify Mr. Rutledge's comment, the rights that we're talking about are entitlement rights associated with planning and zoning. We can't, other than questioning the other rights such as easements or things like that, we can't grant those, we can't
Modify.
You're right. That's a separate process. So with that, any other questions before we go to the applicant for closing comments or rebuttal? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. First, staff, anything further? Okay. All right. Applicant, any closing comments or clarifications or?
No, sir, we don't have anything else.
Okay. Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll open it up for discussion, deliberation, consideration.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeLesline.
I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County zoning ordinance number PDR 2101P, approval of preliminary site plans with stipulations 1A through A4, B1 through B3, C1 through C2, and D1. Adoptions of the finding for specific approval and granting specific approval of an alternative to the Land Development Code of 4027D5 and 7014B4, reduction of greenbelt buffer from 15 to 8 feet along the eastern project perimeter border.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Ron, second. Any additional discussion?
No, sir.
All right, seeing none, we'll call the matter to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0 with Mr. Smock being absent. I believe that concludes our agenda today. And with that, I'd like to,
Election of officers, Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
Chairman, yes.
did I miss that?
Yes, you did.
It's that time of year again.
That time of year?
It's listed under regular agenda.
It's K.
So,
Okay.
Montana Acevedo with the clerk's office, and I will open the floor for nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate the current chair, Bill Connolly, for chair for next year.
Second.
Very good.
Call.
All right. So you close the nominations?
I'll close the nominations. Move to close the nominations.
Thank you.
So with that being said, Mr. Connerly, you're it. So you're in charge.
How many years has that been?
7, I think.
You get it, don't worry.
Not, yeah.
Wait a minute, isn't the law 8 years?
That's,
No, there's
Mr.
condominium boards.
Mr. Bedford's got the record.
Yes, he does.
Do you
Ms.
have the
Acevedo?
floor? You have the floor, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
very good. I'd like to go ahead and open nominations for, what is it called?
First vice chairman.
First vice chair. Sorry, I didn't have the PDF open.
Nominate Mr. Ron.
Mr. Ron nomination. Are there any other nominations?
I'd second that. Recommend we close.
Motion to close.
Motion.
All right, thank you. I don't think we need to vote on it, do we? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Oh,
very
now
good.
you're going to test us.
All right, the second vice chair, is that?
I'd like to nominate our newest board member.
Ms. Kiba? Keba?
Saying it, because I'm not sure yet.
Middle block for you.
Yeah.
You see how I stepped around having to say it, though,
Right.
right? So forgive me, but
I'll
Yeah.
second that.
Mr. Roth, second that. Any additional nominations? Okay, we'll close the motion, and
Welcome.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. I vote aye also. Any other position? Third vice chair?
Yes, there's a third vice chair.
Assistant to the assistant?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Rutledge.
Second.
All right, any other nominations? All right, motion to close?
That's it.
Chance to reconsider.
No nominations from the floor.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Is that it?
Yes, sir,
All
that's
right.
it.
Very good. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Everybody, thanks.
We made it through another one.